My next guest is Terence Tong. Terence has taught in Canada, Kuwait, and South Korea. He is an aspiring leader with an extensive teacher and leadership experience, seeking the next level learning community to serve. He aims to serve the learning community, provide diverse opportunities for students, and engage parents as learning partners. This is his 22nd year teaching, and he is currently teaching in Seoul, South Korea. Welcome to the podcast, Terence.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dana. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat a little bit with you and to connect with your audience.
Great. Well, tell me about a time you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
Wow. You know what? I think I'll have to go back to my early days in education. It's I don't want to make it sound all doom and gloom. But certainly I think it was what led me to international teaching in the first place. I followed a very traditional route, if you will. I went from high school to college to working right away. There's no gap years in between. I didn't backpack in Europe for a semester or anything like that. And then got to a point about 5 or 6 years in where it's like, yeah, I'm getting pretty good at this. I felt like, okay, I've managed the classroom piece and then the pedagogy piece, curriculum piece, and I was getting involved in the school and all that. But I looked around, I saw colleagues, I saw friends that were getting settled, right? Buying a house, having a mortgage, and starting to have kids and whatnot. And then I looked around, I was like, I don't know if that's what I want in my life right now. And as cliche as it sounds, turning 30 was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And if your audience, I'm sure your audience can do the math and figure out how old I am now. So I kind of said to myself, okay, if I don't do it now, I'll never do this. And I made a decision to go overseas. It was, and that's something that I'm so grateful for to this day. I'm so grateful that, and a little bit, and proud of myself too for taking that leap and trusting myself and say, hey, you know what, you got this. Let's go overseas. Let's give this a try. At that point, my first school, it was an initial 1-year contract. So worst case scenario, it's 10 months, of your career, but it could turn into something better. And so here we are, 16 years later, and I'm still, working internationally. So certainly it's I don't want to give your audience the sense that I was unhappy at home. I didn't enjoy working in teaching in Toronto, Canada. That's certainly not the case. But I just wanted something different for myself, and I saw international teaching as an opportunity to do so.
And so you told me in the pre-chat you first went to Kuwait before you moved to Seoul. So that was maybe kind of a little bit rougher as a transition from Canada than Korea. So how was life different kind of and just teaching in general and working with colleagues and students in both of those countries?
Kuwait, for all its beauty and the benefits the country provides, certainly was not a soft landing spot. As a first-time international teacher, certainly growing up in suburbia Toronto, I was sheltered from a lot of things that I just didn't know. I was perhaps part of it is it's just me being ignorant or not learning a little bit more than I should have. By going to a Muslim country, right? Going to a country where it's dry. There's no alcohol. There's no pork. Right? You hear the call to prayer 5 times a day, right? There's social cultural things that that are expected there that are not expected anywhere else in the world. So that was a very steep learning curve. But once again, I was super grateful for that learning opportunity, and the 8 years in Kuwait are have been a highlight in my life right now, and certainly both professionally and personally. That's where I met my wife Marie and all of that. So Yeah, as far as the kids there and pedagogy and whatnot, I worked at a bilingual school.
Hmm.
It was a dual track, English and Arabic.
Okay.
So language arts, science, and math were and some of the specialist courses like art or PE phys ed will be taught in English, and then there's
Hmm.
an Arabic track, of course, Arabic, social studies, and religious studies.
Okay.
Those three are government mandated, and there's a national curriculum there. With the English track curriculum, we use Common Core language arts and math from the States.
Hmm.
Um, Kuwait is a very rich country. It's
Hmm.
rich in oil, and so the kids that we're working with, the families that we're working with, are very well to do as well.
Hmm.
You know, we worked at a fairly. I worked at a fairly big school. About 2,000 students. K to 12 school, and then the school grounds are pretty big, but it's fenced, and there's security gates and whatnot. Not that Kuwait's not safe, it's just the way the school's structured. And then so let's say a family of three or four kids enrolled at school will have three or four different drivers and maids pull up in
Wow.
three or four cars, and then there's Abdullah at the elementary gate, and then there's Aisha and Muhammad in the back gate where the high
Uh-huh,
school
uh-huh.
and middle school is. And so we're dealing with things like that. And then when you ask kids, hey, what do you do for summer holidays? Oh no, we went to a house in France.
Hmm.
Went to Maldives, or you know so we're dealing with families that own telecommunications, that own airlines, that have
Hmm.
private jets, and not just a house or two in Kuwait, but multiple properties in Europe
Hmm.
and Australia, and things like that. So but despite the finances,
Hmm.
ultimately parents still want the best for the kids,
Yeah.
right? Their parents still want their kids to be successful, still want them to go to top tier colleges, in the States and Canada and everywhere else around the world, and all of that. So, the 8 years in Kuwait were fantastic, and obvious, and of course, Kuwait being where it is geographically, it's a short, 5-6 hour flight to Europe, six
Hmm.
7 hours to most of Asia. So that the traveling opportunities were phenomenal as well.
Hmm. Hmm. And then you moved to Seoul 6 years ago.
8 years ago, 2014, we are just in the midst of our 8th year here. At a certain point, Kuwait being a fairly small country, it felt a little monotonous, and
Hmm.
Marie and I felt like it was time to go. And then so 8 years ago, we came to Seoul, South Korea. We've had a good run here. Seoul International School, a smaller K-12 school, about
Hmm.
880, 900 kids, K-12.
Hmm.
Uh, Fairly homogenous in terms of student population. About
Hmm.
90-95% of the kids are of Korean descent, although they
Hmm.
may be passport holders from the States, Canada, Australia, et cetera. And then we have a sprinkling of faculty kids that are American, Canadian, and Kiwis, and whatnot. And
Hmm.
then there's a couple of other expat families in here as well.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, no. So it's been 16 years, 8 years in Kuwait, and we're gonna finish off our 8th year here in Korea, and we're looking forward to moving on to somewhere else, wherever that
Okay.
may be. Yeah,
So that's kind of the 8 year stint, and that's you guys will be ready for a move somewhere else after the
yeah.
2022.
8 years. I mean, I don't want to say 8 years is a long stint, and
Hmm.
certainly,
Hmm.
international teachers kind of approach it differently. There are some
Hmm.
the typical international teaching contract is for 2 years, and then after the
Okay.
initial 2 year contract, you can renew either a year at a time or a couple of years at a time, et cetera, et cetera. And
Hmm.
then some people like to bounce around, every 2 or 3 years just to try out different countries and different
Hmm.
areas of
Hmm.
the world and whatnot. Um, but constantly moving is taxing, because
Hmm.
you do spend a good first part of that first year getting settled and getting things organized and whatnot. And then, I certainly don't want to spend that second year preparing to leave and recruiting and whatnot. So you do want to spend some time enjoying the country, enjoying that part of the world and all that. So maybe 8 years is, 8 years is a good chunk. And there are not many 8-year chunks in one's career. So we're thrilled. We're very happy with our time here, but it is time to move on.
And so the school that you teach at is they don't do bilingual with Korean at all. It's just English.
We're EMS, an English medium school. Everything is taught in English. We use the Common Core as well, Common Core language arts and math, NGSS, and all of that. So, and our being in Korea, our parents have very high expectations of our kids, and so we graduate kids to Ivy League, to the top tier private colleges in the States and whatnot, and so our kids are with us from 8 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. Sometimes they'll still stay behind for after school activities or athletics and whatnot, and then they'll leave campus for good, let's say about 4:35, but then they don't go home. They'll go to hagwons or academies where they do math enrichment, English enrichment, SAT prep, debate, or they go things like fencing, cello, or what other I don't want to sell hagwons as just a purely academic pursuit, but I think at any time there's it's more of a focused, very intensive pursuit of one particular activity, and it could be academic or not.
Okay. And so basically a lot of those kids, I would say, since you're saying their parents are very involved, you don't have a lot of discipline issues.
No, and that's the upside of I don't want to say for all international schools, but certainly international schools that I've been in, the kids are very well behaved. They're the discipline issues, or if you even want to call it that, is leaving their jackets on the floor, their lockers open, or they're maybe dilly-dallying in a hallway or bathroom and not getting to class on time. Certainly I wouldn't even call them behavioral issues. They're just very normal middle school cat issues that that we would get at school or at home. So we're very blessed and very fortunate to be able to work with learners of that caliber. It makes our job easier in a sense. You don't have to worry about some of the extraneous stuff, but there's also a certain expectation that you do show up and you're on top of your game for your kids as well.
Yeah. So I we're both involved in the 100 Stop series book for teachers, 100 Things All Teachers Should Stop Doing. And that came out in May of 2021. And your chapter was on stop dressing unprofessionally or distastefully. And, that stood out to me because we both started our career around the same time. And that was something when I even did my student teaching that was very kind of pointed out really, to, in my case, it was like, wear blouses and skirts, right? And I think it's been kind of, a lot of educators have become a lot more lax with that professional dress sense. So tell me a little bit about kind of some of your thoughts that you write about in the chapter, and then what you kind of have seen evolved, both having worked in Canada, Kuwait, and Korea.
Having been a product of public school system in Canada, even growing up, I had teachers that wore shirt and tie, maybe a sweater with a shirt underneath. So I grew up with a very Norman Rockwell kind of image of what an educator should look like, but then that image has fluctuated, I guess, or has evolved as I've not only stepped in the classroom myself, but I've kind of traveled overseas and worked overseas. I mean, ultimately, you do want to present your best self.
Yeah.
And there's it's hard to be your best self if what you're wearing is kind of betrays that perception or that image that you want to share with your community. I resisted when I was writing the chapter, I resisted in providing a checklist. Okay, these are things that you should wear, these are things you should not wear. That's not what the chapter was about, that's not what the book is about, right? That's but what I wanted to emphasize was this is a conversation or conversations that everyone needs to have within the learning community. Obviously, you have to take into social cultural norms and expectations in the place, and that's coming from having taught in Kuwait and having to deal with the norms there, and obviously the geography as well, right? What's acceptable, what's professional in, let's say, Hawaii, we're very different from what's professional and acceptable in Norway or Sweden, right? And that's just purely based on geography and where you're and latitude and all that. So and the things that, let's say, maybe not me, but what Marie, my wife Marie, can wear here in South Korea coming to work is very, very different from what she can wear going to work in Kuwait. Or maybe if our next stop is in Saudi Arabia or where, right? So there's certain factors that has to come into play. But regardless of those factors, whether it's geography, whether it's social cultural norms and whatnot, as a learning community, you have to establish some baseline rules, right? If as educators, we want parents, we want kids, we want a community to respect what we do. We have to respect ourselves, right? We have to showcase the profession at its best. Right? There's a reason why doctors walk around in lab coats, right? There's no tangible function of that lab coat, right? Because certainly when they're in the operating room, they're not wearing a lab coat, right? But that lab coat affords them the image or the perception of legitimacy, of knowledge, of expertise, right? And so we, as educators, we don't have a lab coat to drape over our shoulders, right? We have to do what we can to create that, or to convey and to create that sense of legitimacy and expertise for ourselves, right? And so no, you can't wear ratty joggers or a hoodie to work on a Tuesday, right? You shouldn't be wearing that 10, 12-year-old t-shirt, to a staff meeting on a Wednesday morning. It just doesn't sit right with me, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there saying, well, what, you have to be comfortable and all that. Absolutely, right? Like, especially Marie teaches the younger kids, right? She is she's sitting cross-legged, she's sometimes on her knees, she's moving around a lot, right? But comfort doesn't equate to being sloppy, right? And so I urge educators, I urge communities, schools, districts to really have those conversations, right? Like, what can we do to uphold the standards for ourselves, for our school, for the district, right? What can we do to put our best foot forward? And this is just a very simple thing to do, right? Put on a polo, put on a shirt and tie, right? Whatever your community dictates is the baseline, right? So it's when Rick approached me with the chapter, with the topic, I'm sure that's easy enough. I do this all the time. It's a no-brainer for me now. Like, yeah, every Friday I'll put on a school issued polo, just school spirit day and all that. And Christmas I'll have a ugly sweater and a little uh, a Santa hat and whatnot. But besides that, hey, you have to dress the part. You have to dress the part. And for someone like myself, who's an aspiring leader,
Mhm.
right? There's that saying, right? Dress for the part you want, dress for the role that you want,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I can't show recruiters, I can't show leadership that I'm ready to step into that role if I'm still coming to school in jeans or and a ratty hoodie. That's just not how it's going to work.
Mhm. Yeah, and that makes me think of like Principal Caffelli, and he talks about on his AP Leadership Academy. He's talked about
Mhm.
that some, and I've worked with teachers before. You can tell kind of who is dressing for the part they want versus who is dressing like they are going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
And and you might say it has to do with age as well, but like you're saying, I think it's something that learning communities, school leadership, maybe the instructional leadership team of a school
Mhm.
kind of needs to just think about, because we have that code of conduct, the dress code for our
Mhm.
students in the handbook,
Mhm.
but we don't really often talk about the adult dress code because,
Yeah.
we assume, they're not going to come with X, Y, and Z on.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there are sometimes teachers who do, and a lot of the time the administrators ignore it because they really don't want to address the issue.
Yeah.
So in your chapter, you write very eloquently. You say, um, people coming to work in a Def Leppard hoodie and a 25-year-old Def Leppard hoodie or tattered basketball shorts. Um, so is that something that you experience, people coming to work in, at least when you were working in North America? Or is it just something that you've at least heard of? There are people that kind of go to that extreme.
I think it's something that I've witnessed, something I've experienced,
Yeah.
and and it's I don't want to use the word you know frustrating or disappointing.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of reality, and
Mhm.
like you said, Dana, it's maybe with everything else that's involved in education, leadership, or instructional coaches or districts, maybe just of all the conversations that they need to have, they just don't want to have that conversation,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? With international teaching, it's our faculty manuals, our staff manuals are pretty pretty well laid out, right? These are things that you shall not wear,
Mhm.
but I imagine working in a public system in Canada or in the States, you know school boards or school districts can't do that, right?
Mhm.
Because with involvement of unions and
Mhm. Yeah.
federations and all that kind of stuff. So um to me, having whether when we go to the next school and to receive that faculty or the staff manual and to see that checklist doesn't really phase me,
Mhm.
right? It's just I accept it as part of of working internationally, right? Along with having a passport, being vaccinated, and all
Mhm.
that stuff. It's
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
another thing,
Yeah.
another hoop I have to jump through, if you will. But certainly, if leadership, if stakeholders don't uphold that standard in the public system, if those conversations, those much needed conversations are being pushed off to the side, you know inevitably there will be erosion of the of educators, or the perception of educators
Mhm.
in parents' mind and students' mind, right? Like,
Mhm.
you brought up age earlier in the conversation, right? If I'm wearing a hoodie and jeans, as let's say a first year, second year teacher,
Mhm.
if I'm wearing a hoodie and jeans, what's separating me from a high school junior or high school senior,
Mhm.
right? At best, I may be 5 or 6 years older than they are, right? So there has to be some sort of, not just, there has to be, that visual difference as well, right? That visual distinction, right? Maybe it's not as much of the case with teaching middle school or elementary school, but certainly, right? If I walk into high school and I need to separate myself, right? Not just for the kids, but for faculty as well, for visitors coming into school building, for parents, et cetera, right? So, and one way we do that is by maybe dressing a little bit more professionally.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely some good points that you laid out, and we just need to encourage, I think, those younger teachers as they join the profession to just set themselves apart from the others. And something you said in the pre-chat was comparing dressing professionally to a dress rehearsal for a play. That it's something that you want to it's part of the package of being a teacher. Like you said, like you compared it to a doctor. We don't have a uniform, but we don't have to wear a suit and tie every day, but we should wear something that is not like we're going to the gym or we just rolled out of bed.
No, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
How did the 100 Stop series call come about? You said you're also doing the admin book, and tell me a little bit about what that chapter is.
Okay.
And you said that has already been written. The book will be out early 2022.
22, yeah. So actually, my involvement with this series is very fortuitous, serendipitous. I was, Dr. Jetta Rick, put a call on Twitter, about last fall, August, maybe September of 2020. And then, maybe because I have a time zone advantage, I was able to catch it on Twitter before a lot of other people. Rick and I have no connections. Like if we walk by each other in the mall, in the streets, or we're perfect strangers. And the fact that he's trusted me with the work, he welcomed me on board. There's no submission of a writing sample beforehand. I shout out to Rick and his crew at Pushing Boundaries, because it's I very much appreciate that to include me in the first one, and then in the second one coming out, like you said, in a few months' time, early 2022, 100 things all school leaders should stop doing. And so my chapter for that second book is on indecisiveness. School leaders that sit on the fence and don't want to make a decision for whatever reason. Be it may lack of information, just general indecisiveness, or because they don't want to fear of losing face, and all that. So I'm thrilled. I'm glad to have been included in the second book, and so that'll be hitting the shelves in about 3 months' time. Hopefully, about 3 months' time, February 2022.
Yeah, and like you did when the other one came out in May, there'll be a lot of graphics and social media posts and a lot of sharing. So anybody who follows either of us will see a lot of that going around. And do you do any other writing, maybe blog or just educational type writing for articles or journals?
No, actually, and this is why I was so appreciative of Rick and his willingness to let me participate in this endeavor. That I'm not unlike yourself, unlike a lot of the other contributing authors. I'm not a consultant. I don't have existing work for Rick to refer to. This is my first piece of published work. So. No, so I guess I don't have a I don't have a podcast. I don't have a blog or anything like that. So to be involved with this was humbling and very, very rewarding, because through this I've had opportunities to connect with consultants and edu leaders and thinkers such as yourself and some of the other contributing authors in the series.
Yeah, it definitely opens doors when you get involved with something in a large
Hmm.
project like that. And now,
Yeah.
there's some authors like yourself who are on both books, and so there's a set of new authors though for the second book, and
Hmm.
and so yeah, it's like the edu Twitter just it keeps growing with those
Yeah.
connections, even though you are
Yeah.
on the other side of the world.
So well, and, it's just I mean, at one point I said to Maria, "Is that what it almost doesn't matter that if the book never sees the light of day. I
Mhm,
think just the fact to be embraced with open arms and to be trusted with the work, and
mhm.
not have anything for Rick to refer to, just to be to be welcomed and have my voice heard,
Mhm,
right? I
mhm.
that was such a big thing for me, such a positive thing for me last year.
Mhm.
Maybe it's with the pandemic, and we have a young toddler at home, and so it was a much needed outlet,
Yeah. Mhm.
both for me personally, and I was thrilled to be involved in that.
Mhm, mhm. Well, I'm glad that you were on the list, and that I came across that,
Mhm.
reading the book as well, and excited for the release of the next one. So,
Mhm.
out of everything we talked about today on the podcast, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
Be your best self
Mhm,
every single day, right? Be your best self, and do that first thing when you wake up,
mhm.
when you make that decision as to what you're going to wear to work.
Yeah.
Okay, because you know 22 years in, lessons bomb. I'm going to tell you now. Right, it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this, lessons will bomb.
Yeah.
Right, lessons will not go to, you can be, it's just not going to work. Right, there are lessons, and some days are really really good, but then there's some days that are not really that great. But you know what, it's so much easier to deal with those not so great days when you're dressed well,
Mhm,
when you can look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, you know what, I didn't have a good day today, but I'm still pretty darn good at what I do.
mhm,
And so when I wake up tomorrow, I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna knock it out of the park.
mhm,
Right. And having that positivity, that image reflected to you in the mirror is so important.
mhm,
Right. It's people don't come, you come to education for because you want to impact students, you want to make a
mhm,
difference. It's not, it is a profession that's easily trampled on by
mhm,
people that are not involved in it, by people that are outside of it, that don't know the blood sweat and tears that goes into it, right?
mhm.
So don't give them another reason to knock you down a notch, right? Don't give them reason. Hey, what is this guy doing? What is she doing? Why is she dressed like she's going to the mall, right? Do yourself a favor, dress the part. You'll feel better for it. The kids will feel better for it. The parents feel better. Like it lifts the image, or the culture of the whole community. And you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your students, you owe it to your profession.
Mhm. Oh, that is so great. And that just makes you think like you want to take pride in what you do, right?
Absolutely,
So look
absolutely, yeah,
look the part.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Mhm. Well, where can people connect with you and find you online?
Well, I'm on Twitter, Mr. Tong SIS, and then I'm on Instagram as well, Mr. Tong SIS. And I have a website for recruiting purposes, but your audience maybe don't need to know that. But yeah, just on Twitter, connect through you, connect through the hashtag 100 Stop Series. But pick up the book, right? And then the blue one for school leaders is coming out in about 3 months' time. Look for that in Amazon or Barnes and Noble, your local bookstore. Sorry, but yeah, I'm sure we'll be you'll see a lot of this coming across your Twitter feed in the next few months.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on the Out of the Trenches podcast today. It was a
No,
pleasure talking with you.
no, thank you, Dana. I do want to say sincerely, thank you for the opportunity to not only connect with you, but with your audience as well. And from Thanksgiving Day, I want to wish everyone at home a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Stay safe, take care, and and be sure to put forth your best foot on Monday morning. Enjoy the turkey, enjoy the football, stay safe.
Bye.